So just try and just relax, and just, it's as though the two sides of the body sort of just fall away from each other, like a rift opens up in the middle. Okay. So let's just try activating the Dan Chen. So just pulling it in and then releasing. So it's like the Dan Chen, the belly muscles need endless work. So in a sense, they're like the mind's anchor. If the mind is anchored here, then it won't chat to itself all the time. So the chatty mind, you know, what we call the ego, it colonizes and pollutes everything that it can. And so we just have to sort of bring it to some sort of halt. And then we realize that the big mind, the mind we're trying to access, was there all along. It was just polluted and masked by this other mind. So just really let it flex the spine. We're just trying to get the spine breathing in a sense. So it's not just the belly that's tightening, it's the anus and the perineum. So for a man, you're trying to pull your balls up. And also if you're sitting cross-legged, it's like you're pressing the knees down into the ground here, almost to lift yourself up in the middle. So everything is just pulling into that dantian area. So everything's coming in, and then it's almost like you're sort of turning inside out, like your insides are spilling out, and then they come back in. Okay, now let's just try the alternate. Yeah, so just start it off. We want to feel the two stages to instituting a technique, starting an exercise. So there's the first stage where we're very conscious of what we're doing because it's something new and possibly difficult or just requires concentration. But then, you know, because these exercises, they're all so simple, you know, it doesn't take long before you've got into the exercise, you're technically proficient. And then we just want to get into the next stage, which is where you keep the mind present, but you slip out of the consciousness. So when you're conscious of something, it's as though you're outside, sort of looking at it. If you like, try and imagine, you know, the last time you went for a swim, yeah, then what you see in your mind's eye is yourself swimming. You don't see what you saw when you swam, yeah. So it's like our consciousness is always outside, and we want to just let that go so we can just sink into the very center of the exercise and just become consumed by it. So it's almost unconscious. And then we call that sinking into energy. Yeah. So to sink into energy, you have to first leave consciousness. So all consciousness, in a sense, is self-consciousness. And it's all holds you back, really. You need it to start something going. So you need it for instruction, to either receive instruction or to give instruction, and you need it for construction, to build something. But then once you've got it, you just let it go. Otherwise, it will just hold you back. See it best with children, yeah? If you try and give them too much instruction, they'll just get anxious and confused. Just give them a tiny bit and they'll flourish. So we just lose the conscious mind so that we can become consumed by what it is that we're doing. Like John always used to say, as soon as you become conscious and you think to yourself, oh, this is good fun, or gosh, I'm really happy, then suddenly you stops being quite so fun and quite so happy. Yeah? And when you let go of that conscious control, then often what you're doing improves. It will sort of take you into realms of the unknown. So you just want the energy to be able to go where it needs to, not being inhibited by your fearful consciousness. Okay. So now, have you got the stick? Yeah, because I've realized that these exercises with the stick are just really important. Or just it's really just bringing that sort of elastic tightness into the into the space between the bottom of your ribs and your hips. Not quite the midriff, just a little bit lower. So the waist area, what in Tai Chi we call the waist. So just feeling like you've got a wide, like one of those weights belts that protects the lower back. You could get one actually and just wear it quite tight, because the buckle would be just exactly where your dantian is. Yeah? So if you wear it quite tight, then the buckle's digging into your dantian all the time. It just brings a little bit of mind there. Okay, now just keeping the tightness in the midriff area and just turning. So what we want to feel is the limit, because what we want to do is make that limit elastic. So as I turn to the left, the limit stretches, and then I just relax and it springs me back. So in Tai Chi, they say if you want to turn to the left, first turn to the right first. And basically that right turn is just stretching the elastic and then just allowing the elastic to spring you back. So here I'm making a real effort to extend beyond where I normally go. And then I just relax and it will spring me back. I think of this being like bungee rubber. So the end of the bungee where it's attached is the dantian. And then I just stretch the rubber as I fall. And then it just reaches the limit and springs back. And just keep this whole waist area quite tight. You just want to feel how, for that belt to be sort of uniformly strong, then basically my belly needs to be as strong as my lower back. Ooh. Again, just keep the mind with it. Just close your eyes and just go into the muscles that are working. Ugh. So we're trying to get the mind into the motor, into the part that's working, not in the part that's moving. So my mind isn't in the stick or my hands. It's in my waist. And just really tighten. Take it as far as you can. And just feel the tension that you need to have to stop that from hurting you. It has to be really quite tight. So it's that sort of athletic, elastic tightness. That's very responsive. Okay, now let's try. So there's that one, the twisting, and then the tipping. So here, we just want the spine to bend side to side. So I'm not just tipping with my waist like this. So I have to be careful that my knee doesn't come up here, because I want to bend the spine. And now, again, just feeling the part that's stretching. So it's like a stretch of rubber. It's like a sheet of rubber. And then I just allow it to tighten. And that will pull me back. And you can just make the stretch slightly more intense by just turning the head to look towards the hand that's coming upwards, like they do in yoga. And so yoga is great, but just to do it with this sense of this sort of juicy, elastic tone, rather than just making the muscles long and getting into these crazy stretches. So it's the connectivity in the body. It's just, that bungee rubber has to be really consistent. Otherwise, it's liable to snap. And we wouldn't want that. Okay, now let's just try a few forwards. Again, just feel the two muscles, so the belly and the back working together. So my belly starts pulling to pull me forwards, and my back starts stretching, but holding to stop me from, to make this descent slow and controlled in some way. And now I just pull with the back muscles. And then as soon as I start tipping backwards, the belly muscles have to come into play to stop me from falling backwards and banging my head against the wall. And then tightening the back. So we just want to feel the two working together. As one tightens, the other one stretches. And then that one tightens and the other one stretches. And just feel it. It's like the one that's stretching, it gets to the point where it's got no choice but to pull back. That's what we want to feel, the point of return. So here my back is stretching, 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 stretching. And then there's a point where it's like the movement has to continue. It's almost like a natural fundamental law. And so it's only got one place to go. Either those muscles can snap or it has to return me. That's it. You just want to get those belly muscles shaking a little bit if you can. So just lingering as you lean backwards. Right, looks good. That's it. So you just want the mind just dwells in the waist area and it's just switching from front to back. It's like you've got an expanding mind in the expanding muscle. So a mind that is actually becoming spirited, and a tightening, withdrawing mind in the tightening muscle. So we're allowing the use of the body, this natural, elastic, juicy use of the body, to recondition the mind. So the mind will always put up barriers. The mind will put up limits that are unnatural to the body. So we're wanting the body to extend and clarify the mind. Okay, now let's just try a few where we just push the bar up. But it's the same thing. Imagine the bar's pretty heavy, and so you don't have enough strength in your arms to get it going. So you need to just tense here and throw your head backwards in order to start the movement. And then imagine that the bar is held up there and you have to pull it down. Yeah. So now you don't have enough strength in your arms to pull it down. So you need to start the movement by pulling in the belly. So my belly pulls and that starts the bar moving down, and then my arms continue the movement. Yeah, so the arms are just an extension of your waist, of your belly, lower back. This is the lower back, and this is the belly. Yeah. So just feeling the front and the back working alternately, but also being aware of the belt, that if the back is working, then so is the front. The front is always supporting the back, and the back is always supporting the front. So you never get one working without the other. So that belt has to be tight. And if you've got one set of muscles loose, then it's not going to be tight. It'll only be tight on one side, and that's useless. So pushing it up and then pulling it down, and just see it, just feel it. Imagine it's really difficult. So it's not so much a heavy weight. It's more like, imagine you've got these two attachments of elastic either end to the ground. And so you're stretching some stiff elastic here, and then the elastic is attached to the ceiling and you're really pulling it down. So it sort of gets more difficult the lower you get. And then here, it gets more difficult the higher you get. Ooh, and pull. And push. And pull. Yeah. So both movements have to be triggered by spirit, but the one that comes up is triggered by this lifting light spirit that wants to leap out, and the one that comes down is a contracting, withdrawing spirit that comes in. Yeah, so this is what. But then here, this is the interesting one, really, because we're not used to this one. So something that pulls you in. And that's it. And then you just get some continuity. So just feel how the second movement comes out of the first. Yeah, so here, as I push up, the belly gets stretched until the belly has to pull. And then here, the back is getting stretched until the back has to pull. So the yin always comes out of the yang and the other way around. Ooh. Okay. And now let's just try a few with the just opening the shoulders, just letting it down the back. If you just did this one every day, it would become easy. Yeah, so the waist area just needs a lot of work, and I haven't come across any better way of working on it than this. When you're sitting down, either cross-legged or on a chair, it doesn't matter. So your hips are immobilized, and just really getting that waist belt kicking in and working. Is that when, you know, when you see a good athlete, you see them being interviewed or whatever, and it's just so clear that they're in a different world. They just live in a different reality than average. They just live in a reality dominated by spirit and responsiveness and spontaneity. Again, just try and keep the mind with the motor. So with the belly, lower back complex, rather than with the actual bar, with the movement. So this is my back really tightening. And then it stretches, belly tightens, back. And then the belly has to tighten to get the bar to go over the top and down. And now my back. And then there's a little bit of belly kicking in here to start the descent. Okay, so let's just put the bar down now. Okay, so just, so what they say in Tai Chi is to try and use the arms more like legs and the legs more like arms. So, for example, Nitsan, apparently, one of his students told me that he starts every class now with a handstand. So the person comes up into handstand and someone just holds their legs up to stop them from falling over, and just, you know, strengthening the arms to be able to support the body weight. Yeah. So to work more like legs. And we really want the legs to be able to just be delicate and light and dexterous like the hands and the arms. So let's just try just leaning back slightly and just sort of just cycling, like you're cycling with the legs, yeah? And you're just resting back on your sacrum, yeah? So your sacrum is just resting on the cushion or on the chair. So you can do this lying down. It's easier lying down. But we'd like to be able to just pick the feet up and just almost like we could place objects with the toes. And just getting the two just alternating and just letting the sacrum rock with the movement of the legs. Yeah. So a good idea, start the day. You know, when you wake up and you're still in bed, just start with that. And then just bring it back. Okay, now let's just sit for a few seconds and just feel the body. Yeah, so we need enough strength in the legs, not just to support the body, but to be able to lift themselves up very lightly from the ground. I remember once I was pushing hands with Vern, and Vern had sort of done taekwondo for a long time when he was in his 20s. And we were just sort of chatting and doing pushing hands in that useless way we were so used to. And suddenly I got kicked on the side of the head by Vern's foot because we'd been pushing hands and he just lifted his leg and just tapped me here just to point out that I wasn't concentrating. But it was what I remember most was the feeling, yeah, the feeling of shock, but also that amazing feeling of lightness that came over the situation when this leg just came up to this sort of height, yeah. So when, you know, when the legs are just used to moving you around all the time and supporting you, they really become quite heavy and congested. And, you know, we just want to flush that out. John always used to say, you know, Tai Chi students are famous for being constipated. Yeah. So this look of, like they're just full of all this sort of shit that just wants to come out, but they just don't know how to let it out because they don't have spirits. So they don't know how to let their energy out. Okay, so just getting into the posture. So the posture is the posture here, this part of the body, this is the important part when it comes to posture. It's very similar to how it was when we were just doing that cycling. Yeah. So this is pulled in. There's a sense that your lower back and your sacrum are just flat. And the legs feel like the knees could very easily come up. So it's the opposite of sticking the bum out and letting the belly fall forwards. So it's all withdrawn here and it's coming forwards from the sides. So your front is a cave that is receding and sucking, and your arms and your legs are embracing. So this is riding horse. So just feeling the spine splitting at the sacrum. So let's just try a little bit of this. So down the spine, and then just feel, oh, something in me just relaxes to allow that split at the sacrum. And that relaxation will tend to let the bum flick out. So this is where we need the little bit of tension in the belly to stop the bum sticking out when you relax across the sacrum. Ooh. Yeah, so we just try to keep the mind quiet so that the movement can be continuous. So there's this continuous elasticity through time, not just through space. So as the moments proceed, they have an elastic connectivity. And then it doesn't matter so much when your mind starts wandering a little bit, because the system has resilience. It will always pull you back if you wander, if you stray. So you can allow the bomb to stick out a little bit, knowing that it's going to be pulled in by your probity and your impeccability. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so they say, you'll only get to the next stage if you manage to let go of everything that's holding you in this stage. So in a sense, so at that point where it becomes total, that's when you slip through to the next stage. John used to liken it to, he often used to say, look, you're all this close, yeah? Says you're all dipping your toes into the water. I want you to plunge in, yeah? I want you to dive in. And this is what people won't do, especially now. The bourgeoisie, they want all these choices. And I want to be like this sometime. I want, Tai Chi is this slot on a Tuesday evening or Tuesday morning. And the rest of the time you're an arsehole, yeah? And it just doesn't work like that. So there's that enlightened American Zen Buddhist. He's called Adyashanti. He's lovely. There's lots of clips on YouTube. But he's one of these sort of American enlightened masters that I don't believe, because it's all, oh, look at me, I'm enlightened, yeah. And, they always say, like a real enlightened master, you just can't see, yeah. Because they're sort of invisible. They're just receding all the time. They're not displaying their wares and showing off. And, there he was, all enlightened and doing these sort of workshops, which you had to pay an absolute fortune to go on. And then he got really sick. He got Bell's palsy and he just couldn't teach anymore. And and then, like, in the forums and everything, it was all, oh, maybe the work that he's done has produced this sickness, yeah. And he just responded, he said, look, this sickness is just my next stage. It's the next stage that I've got to, that I have to work through, yeah. And so his enlightenment was just a stage. It was a stage to the next stage. There's always a next stage, yeah. One of my students had been a student of his in New York. And John always used to say, if never take students that have studied with someone else, because there'll always come a point where they'll pick and choose. They'll decide to take this from you and that from the other teacher. And he just said, it never works, yeah. And that's what she was like. Oh, yes, but Adyashanti said this, yeah. Yeah, so if you receive teaching and you don't practice it, it's more likely to cripple you than anything else, yeah. So it splits. Oh. Ooh. So it's a bit like relaxing the bowels to have a shit. Yeah. So just have to be careful you don't dump in your pants. Although it's not the end of the world. There's a certain pleasure. And when I got salmonella, and I was just so weak, I just couldn't get out of bed. And I had diarrhea. And there's come a point where, well, I can't get out of bed, so it's going to happen here. And there's something really quite liberating about shitting in the bed. Ooh. And then just back into right now. It should really feel this sort of cup shape, like a cave or a cup. And cups are amazing. You had a piece of clay and then you just made a dent in it, and now it can contain something. It's amazing. And you can feel the energy. You can put, just feel where it opens, and ooh, it feels so different from the other side. Okay. And now let's just try this, but more like an energy exercise rather than a breathing necessarily. So just feeling the hands, like you have like an elastic connectivity between the hands. So it's always a little bit difficult to pull them apart, and then it's a little bit difficult to push them together. So we're just teasing that relationship between the hands. John was doing this all the time. Yeah, literally. If ever we were resting, he'd just be doing this, and it would never be this. Yeah, it'd always be ooh, yeah, a bit like just doing figures of eights. Yeah. So just feeling the fascia, feeling all these elastic filaments. That was a word that John used to love, filament. Everything was a filament. We were connected by filaments. There are filaments you're full of, and the Castaneda as well. Yeah. We are an infinite array of endless filaments. So connections that are elastic, that can be worked. And then just the same thing really, but just turning the ball. And just getting into it. Yeah. So we tend to get embarrassed by sincerity. So when you see someone being really sincere, there's a sense that they're sort of exposing too much of themselves. But we just want to really just get into it in such a sincere way that it just becomes really emotional. I mean, if John was doing this, the tears would literally be rolling down his cheeks. I mean, he wouldn't be sobbing, he wouldn't be boo-hooing, but he'd be really tearful. Because he didn't know anything other than sincere, being an Irishman. Yeah. So we just have to be able to work in such a way that we forget the pain in the legs. Otherwise, that will always limit us. So now just bringing a turn in as well. So trying to keep the ball going, but turning the hips, turning the waist. So there's these two movements. There's the local, which is the turning of the ball. And then there's a more global movement, which is your waist moving the ball from side to side. And just see, when the mind that's telling you to come up and stop working so hard and telling you you're in pain, that's your consciousness. That's the bad part. So if you can get into it, you just become the exercise and you lose that consciousness. And then the exercise can take you somewhere that will really strengthen you. Otherwise, your weakness will always hold you back. Okay, and now let's just try just a few more of these. So a change is as good as a rest. You don't need to rest. As they say, you can rest in the coffin. Okay, and now just change it into this where we go down and just scoop from the ground. So just scooping the handful of water, splash it into the face, and then let it trickle over the body and down the legs. So down, scooping, using the muscles in the lower back to bring the hands up, and then straightening the legs to bring everything up, splashing into the face, and then down the body, down the chest, down the groin, down the legs, and into the ground. So the more you can see it, the more you can feel it, and the more it will benefit you. I'm guessing, so something in you can really relax when you get close to the ground. Yeah. So we just want to make sure that it's the lower back that starts this rising. The lower back starts my head moving up and backwards, and then my legs just flow me up, and then the legs don't have to work so hard. They just have to continue a movement. They don't have to start the movement. So the movement starts from my waist, my lower back belly complex. And then you can basically just keep this going. You're not limited by the strength in the legs anymore. Ooh. So the worst thing is getting into like a habit and then letting the mind wander. That's the enemy. And it will always happen. And so we just have to be endlessly patient and just bring it back all the time. So this is the thing with meditation and with practice. 99% of it is utter shite. But you have to go through it to get that 1% of pure gold. Ooh, that's great. And now let's just bring it back into riding horse. Should feel a bit like a tomcat that's been in a fight. You only see them, they're so bristling, and then slowly, it takes like 5 minutes for them to just sort of let it all go. Okay, now let's just start moving. And again, just, yeah, so we're quite good at feeling as though the arms are tentacles, this sense that the arm is attached here and it comes up and out. So like a bungee rubber that's thick here and really strong, and then really light and delicate at the fingers. Now we just want to feel the same with the legs. So as I go into this leg, this one stretches and the foot opens. And then what starts the movement? It's just the contraction of the rubber, but in a sense, it all starts in the toes. The toes start curling up, having reached the limit of their straightness. So they have no choice, really. I can either stop and become stiff, or I can let the movement continue by returning. Ooh, and it will draw me in. So we just want to become conscious of the toes, the foot. It's as though the foot is moving the body, but it's not really. It's the whole leg attached at the dantian. That whole strip of rubber has stretched, and then it just slowly starts recoiling, pulling back into itself. And just feel the leg. So the leg is straightening and stretching, but so is my mind. Something in my mind is really, really extending. And then right at the limits of that extension, it starts curling back in. Yeah, so I have to be willing to really go right out to the edge, because what I'm doing all the time is slipping behind the objects of my world. So when the hand goes over the branch, the fingers get to the other side, the side of the branch you can't see. And that's where you pull in from. So we're pulling in from our blind spots, if you like. So here and just really trying not to let the bomb flick out. So that just takes a certain mind. That's the ruthless mind. The mind that takes no prisoners. So, yeah, so we mustn't let the rubber stretch so much that it sticks my bum out. It almost reaches there, but then it pulls back. Okay. Okay, now let's just try just standing in riding horse, but to the diagonal. Yeah. So just same posture, everything the same. We've just shifted the legs because we're going to work into bow and arrow. So just feel it. When you relax across here and let your sacrum spread, you just naturally push into the outside edges of the foot. Now we're going to get into bow and arrow. So just the front foot, this foot here, just point it forwards, So remember, the third toe, the middle toe, is pointing forward, so the big toe's in a little bit. And now we just want to turn. So we turn by straightening the legs. Now, if I'm here in riding horse and I straighten the legs, and obviously I'll come up. So what we want to do is allow that straightening to turn the hips. Yeah, so as I straighten my left leg, it pushes my left hip forwards, and that leg now is the back foot. And if I straighten my right leg, it pushes my right hip backwards, and that is now a front foot. Yeah. So what I want to do is just feel how this is springy. Yeah. If I relax, it just wants to come back into riding horse. So it requires a constant feeding of energy to keep it like this. I don't want to just lock and just seize myself in this position. I want to feel the work that's going on in the two legs to maintain it. And I want to keep the outside edges, yeah? Especially the back leg. That's the one that, the knee tends to come forward and the outside edge peels off the ground. So I have to work the two knees away from each other in order to keep my outside edges at the same time that I'm pushing both legs against each other to keep my hips facing front. Yeah. So this is riding horse. Not riding horse, bow and arrow. Always get them mixed up. So just relaxing into it and just feeling, very quickly it builds up with energy and you start shaking because it's a very energetic posture. Whereas riding horse tends to be quite sort of low energy because it's like the bottom of the trough where you would naturally settle. So the front leg is pushing the ground to push this back, and the back leg is pushing the ground to push this forwards. And there's a real rubbery, elastic, dynamic play between the two sides of the body. And there's a lot of energy. So you can just push with that outside edge just a little bit more, and you can just feel the energy flowing into the other hand. And then with this one, just pushing that outside edge here, and you'll feel the energy coming up through here. But both arms are so different, and both legs feel so different that they have like a natural single weightedness. That just comes from the lack of symmetry, the fact that you've got a front foot and a back foot. So the energy from the back foot, it's almost like a straight line. It just comes up through the body. So it's coming from behind me as my foot is pushing back. It's drawing the energy up the leg from behind and then forwards. Now, from the front foot, it's basically the energy is changing direction because it's coming from here, loops through my body, and then out here. So the front foot energy is difficult, but it's really powerful because it has that twist, yeah? And you can feel it, where's the energy for this hand coming from? It's coming from this leg, but it's being placed, it's being controlled and positioned by this leg, yeah? So, Bruce Lee used to say, when you strike someone, you actually strike them with your hip. So my hip throws the fist, like my fist is just like a stone that's settled in the hollow of the hip, and I just flick my hip like this, and the stone is thrown off. So this hip actually directs the hand, but the energy for it comes out of the other leg. So both legs are really important, but they have very different functions. Okay, now let's try. So let's just bring it back to riding horse to start with. And then we'll just turn this way and get my left foot being the front foot. So just turn those left toes out a bit, not too much. And then just working the legs. So this leg is pushing back here, which drives this hip forwards. And this leg is pushing that way, which pushes this hip back. So again, just trying to feel that springiness. So I mustn't tighten across the sacrum. Otherwise, I'll lock my two halves of my body together, and then effectively I've only got one thing. I don't have the two sides that can play with each other. And again, just feel, especially the front foot, we just really want to make sure we can get front foot energy. So that outside edge is really cutting into the ground and just bringing this loop of energy through me into the opposite hand. And just relaxing into it. But the more you relax into it, the more it starts vibrating. So you're relaxing into movement or into energy rather than into stillness. And it's really, we just want to get it to that point where it's shaking uncontrollably. And it's difficult because the stronger you get, the further that place gets from you. It's just the unknown, really. Drinking of the unknown. Whoa. And you just play with it. You just stay there and just feel it. Feel how it's empowering you. It's bringing your energy and your spirit up. It's turning you into an animal. And then there's a point where you just let it come back into riding horse, yeah? So that's, riding horse is enough of a rest. So riding horse is a rest from bow and arrow. Let's just bring it this way again. So just turn the front toes out. And again, I'm just moving, I'm turning my hips by working both legs together. So I don't want to lock my legs together into a mechanism. I want them both to be independent and just cooperating. So each one of them has to really be aware of the other and listen to the other. So it's not a central authority that's giving commands. It's just a single weighted body, a body of two independent halves working well. Whoa. And just make sure the back leg doesn't collapse in the back knee, because that'll take you out of the outside edge. Yeah? The outside edges are really important. The spoon of the leg. So imagine you're eating ice cream, eating pudding into a spiritual exercise. You're just feeling that edge of the spoon as it slips under and then brings that morsel to your greedy mouth. It's the same here. You're just scooping some energy out of the ground and just bringing it into your belly, but not via your mouth. Yeah, it's the same thing. And this should feel just as delectable. Yeah, it's just as delicious. The good thing about the keto diet, anything that's remotely sweet just tastes too sweet. You just can't take it into your body. Okay, so now let's just bring it into riding horse, but just facing front. So now let's just try just for a minute or so, just a little bit of stepping. Yeah, so here, obviously in the stepping in Tai Chi, that's when you can just allow that delicate lightness in the legs. Yeah. So just very sort of mechanical, just making sure that you obey that rule of Tai Chi, that when the body's moving, the legs aren't, and the legs only move when the body's still. Yeah. So I sink into one leg, into the outside edge in order to get this scoopy feeling, and that will allow the other leg to come up. Yeah. So this is like the ice cream that's coming towards my mouth, and this is the spoon that's scooping it up. And then you just step out, making sure you're not moving. Yeah. So if I want to send that leg out without moving, then effectively I have to move this way a little bit because my center of gravity is changing because the weight of the leg is moving here. So as I move here, something in me is moving this way to balance it. Yeah. And I put the foot down, and then I come into the leg. Don't want to come into the leg by pushing like this because that will always bring me up and it's just a little bit stupid and heavy. So I come into the leg by just using that outside edge to just cup the ground again. So I'm cupping the ground, pulling myself, spooning the ground, pulling myself into this foot. And that allows this foot just to step up or be held up. Yeah. That's basically how we step. So down. And then as I go this way with the leg, I have to go this way very slightly with my body. And then I can put the foot down. I want to make sure that when I put the foot down, I don't bring a little bit of weight into it. I stay here. And then once I've got the foot down, then I can start using it on the ground. So I just round out like this, yeah, like a digger that's scooping. So the whole leg becomes the spoon. And then once I'm in this foot 100%, then I can consider bringing up the other foot. Okay, so let's just try a few. So just down, stepping, feel that lightness. Ooh, and down, and then back. Ooh, and ooh. Yeah, so it's my sinking that allows the leg to come up. The more I can sink down here, the higher this leg can be brought up. Yeah, so as you know, as John moved through his Tai Chi career, his Tai Chi life, his postures got more and more sunk. Yeah, I just couldn't keep up. You know, we'd be doing pressing, and he would just be like, I'd be looking down here at him. Yeah, because his thighs really were parallel to the ground. And this is what Dr. Chi said: you have to work parallel to the ground with your thighs, otherwise you just don't build up the right strength. So. And that requires like real passion. You have to become the masochist. You have to be able to bear the pain. And you bear the pain not by cutting off from it, but by really becoming passionate about and impassioned by it. Ooh. Okay. So you just need to appreciate the importance of spirit and just how rare it is, just how hard pressed you'd be to come across anyone that's really teaching it or even using it. Okay, so let's just bring it up. And this is withdrawing. There's a lovely film, I think I still have it, and it was made by just a young American guy that decided to go to China, mainland China, right into the wilderness, and try and find people that were doing spiritual work. And he found this sort of little community, and they're all living sort of in separate, like little sort of farmhouses, right in the jungle, very similar to the place where I went to. Raining all the time, and consequently just growing. Everything was just growing, yeah. And they were lovely, these people, sort of, relatively uneducated and sort of humble, rustic folk. And they sort of chatted with him, and he stayed with them a while, yeah. And they said to him, "Oh, there's one of us who's really advanced. He's nearly got to enlightenment." And they sort of took him to see this guy. And it's like he never really came out of the shadows. The camera couldn't quite focus on him, yeah. He was so withdrawn. So not that image of enlightenment where you've got the enlightened master swanning around in his robes, looking a complete wanker. I mean, this guy was just, it was almost like he was shy, yeah. And he was just in, and he didn't come out of that inner mental space. You know, he was aware of this foreigner and this camera crew. But, I thought, wow, that's real enlightenment, yeah. It's not these bloody Americans, yeah. So just feeling here, this is the center of it, because that's the center of your elastic, your ability to withdraw. I've got a couple of friends that went to one of Adyashanti's workshops in Holland, and it was expensive. There were hundreds of people there, so he was a real good money spinner. And he would come and give like a Dharma talk, yeah, and people would be taking notes. He says, "Oh, don't worry about taking notes, because we'll make this available as a recording tomorrow." And of course, come tomorrow, there were these CDs that they were charging a lot of money for, of the previous day's talk, yeah. And that's when my friends realized it's just a money spinner, yeah. And that's all, yeah. Not much else in it. The Tao was kind to him and made him sick. Put him in a position where he couldn't make money by teaching anymore. Okay, so let's finish.